Hey, today we've got to talk about prayer because there's a high chance that you are participating in a very common prayer practice that might be keeping you from experiencing God on a much higher level. So stay tuned and I will tell you all about it. Hey there, extraordinary child of God. I'm SaMonna, and this is the place where I help you transition from where you are to where God wants you to be. So why don't you go ahead and like this video, share it with a friend, and subscribe to the channel. Now, many years ago, there lived a man who was a husband, a father, a farmer, and most importantly, a child of God. He was a good, hardworking man who loved his family, and above all else, he prided himself on being a good provider. But unfortunately, despite his greatest efforts, he found himself facing a challenge, one that he couldn't seem to overcome. He had found himself in the middle of a drought, and there was no water to be found. The African sun had scorched the whole land over hundreds of square miles. The rivers and the streams had all dried up, right along with the well that was right next to his home, that his family relied upon for their water. Now, this was a tragic situation, because this man had worked hard for years developing this land so that he could provide for his family. But now his crops were withering away, his cattle were parched with thirst, and it seemed like he was on the verge of losing everything. And to make matters worse, every time one of his little girls would look into his eyes and say, "Daddy, I'm thirsty," his heart would literally break. There was nothing that he could do. He had no control over the rain, and there was no water to be found anywhere. He was at his wit's end, so he decided that the only thing left to do was to plead with God to send the rain. So he gathered his wife and his 2 daughters together. He explained to them how serious the situation was and told them that the only thing they could do was to ask Jesus to send the rain. So as a family, they knelt down together before the God of the universe, and they began to pray. He prayed first, begging God to send the rain. Then his wife prayed, and she too begged God to send the rain. But when his oldest daughter, Renee, who was still just a little girl, when Renee began to pray, her prayer was a little different. Yes, like everyone else, she prayed that God would send the rain, but she added a little something different to her prayer. She said, "Jesus, if you don't send the rain, please send some water into the well." And when her father heard her little prayer, he smiled. She was so sweet and innocent. She didn't understand that a well couldn't be filled with water if it didn't rain. But his daughter, she was of a different opinion. She believed that Jesus could do anything, because when they were finished praying, she disappeared. They didn't realize it, but this little girl, full of childlike faith, excitedly went to the well to see what Jesus was going to do. And when she got to the well, she immediately began to remove the heavy top that covered it. And because of her size, she was only able to move it just a little bit, just enough so that she could peek down and see if Jesus had put water into the well. But the well was too dark for her to see if water was there. So she took a little pebble and she dropped it into the well, expecting to hear a splash. And after just a moment of silence, her ears rang with joy as she heard the pebble splash into the water below. In a frenzy of excitement, she ran to tell her parents that Jesus had answered her prayer and put water into the well. And when her father heard her words and saw the excitement in her little face, he couldn't believe it. He wouldn't believe it. They had just prayed, and it definitely hadn't rained. Little Renee had to be mistaken. But he went running out to the well nonetheless. And when he got there, he was in for the shock of his life, because he too discovered that Jesus had put water into the well, and he did it without any rain. And the reason I'm sharing this story with you today is because you have got to stop limiting God, and you have got to start praying bigger prayers. Stop limiting God by asking him to solve your problem in a way that makes sense to you. God's ways are not your ways, which means he has thousands of ways that you can't even imagine to remedy your situation. Which is why you've got to start praying differently. Pray bigger. Let God know that you understand just how big he is by praying prayers that reflect his greatness. When you can't pay your bills, don't just ask God to give you a new job or to send you some extra money. Instead, ask God to pay your bills in any way that he sees fit, even if it seems impossible to you. God is a big God, and I'm pretty sure that he can handle your problems. So let me know what you think about today's message by commenting below. And be sure to share this message with a friend. And as always, remember that you are extraordinary through Christ. God bless, and I look forward to seeing you here next Thursday at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.